Okay, so you are either making a comic right now or you want to make one. Let's let's talk about it. Let's talk about why you're making comics. Before we dive in, I want to remind you this video is for entertainment. These are just my own opinions. If anything I say here resonates or works for you, that's great. If not, that's okay too. Pick and choose what works for you. Okay, so I want to start off with this. I believe it's important to remember why you're making comics, primarily because that's really the only way you know you're going in the right direction. It's if your actions and your progress aligns with your why. There's so many different routes that you can take on your journey of making comics. Success in this comic space, it can look different for everybody. To preface, I think it's okay if later on in your journey of making comics you feel a change of purpose, but I want to emphasize this, that the more you understand and resonate with your why will make it easier for you to be more consistent on how you go on about your journey as a comic creator. You would be able to make better decisions on what routes you need to take or what areas you need to improve on because of how they align with your purpose. Alright, so I have a few basic reasons on why you may be pursuing making comics. I'm sure you can think of others as well, but we will just go ahead and start off with this list. So, number one, you want to tell your story. There's a story you've been looking for, and so far, you have come to the conclusion that no one has told this story before. I guess if you can't find it, you must make it, right? Or you otherwise have a great story idea that you want to share to the world. Perhaps you have been inspired by other great works and you have your own perspective and spin on how you want to tell a similar story. Ultimately, I do believe that we all have a unique perspective on telling a story because by the end of the day, we all have different life experiences, and our own unique and personal experiences have an effect on how we see the world and how we communicate that. Basically, to bring it back to my point, if your goal is you want to tell your story, then the actions you need to take is exactly that, to get to the point that you have told your story. Ways that you can be able to accomplish that is either you finish your comic before you post it, or maybe you're finding ways to speed up your output on the visual components. So what that can mean is perhaps using 3D assets, whether that's for backgrounds, characters, or prop items, or you are delegating some of the tasks in your art workflow, whether that's outsourcing line work, coloring, shadowing, or other artistic rendering of your panels. Or another option that you can take is you are the writer of your story, and either you're doing a collaboration or you are hiring an artist to draw your story. So a big trap I see commonly with indie comic creators is they would go back to try to redraw their initial episodes. And it ends up becoming just like the cycle, like, no, it's not good enough, and going back into redoing it over and over and not getting to the point where they are progressing on their story. Most times when creators go back to redo their episodes, it's usually to try to fix the art and not so much because of the story. If your purpose is that you want to tell your story, do not fall into this trap. You need to learn to be able to just push forward and focus on progressing in your story. If you are doing anything but that, you're not focusing on your goal here. Like you're really just distracting yourself from your goal, which is to ultimately tell your story. I think if you are redoing your initial episodes and whatnot, and it is because to fix a little bit of your story writing, so then I would say, yeah, then that does add to your goal because you are trying to tell your story better, and that's fine. But if you are going back with the intentions of trying to just fix your art, but your story and how you had laid it out in the beginning is fine, I would say really try to refrain yourself from falling into that trap and doing that, and just focus on doing the next episode, not redoing your episodes. If after you have finished your project and you feel that you have to go back and redo your initial episodes because your art style has changed so much, then you can go ahead and do that, but at least you have accomplished your goal that you have told your story. Another trap that you should try to avoid if this is your main priority to tell your story is do not pay attention to these trendy tropes on what you may see on social media or what you may see what other webcomic platforms might be pushing out for. I think all it is just distraction for you. It's going to deter you from telling the story of how you actually wanted it to be told. And if you end up changing your story to try to fit what's trending in the market right now, you might end up disappointing yourself later on down the road if you feel that you've written yourself into the scenario that you absolutely don't care for, or that completely changes the soul element of your story, and it doesn't become your story anymore, and it becomes the story that you're trying to follow with all the other trends. And so really put all of those noises to rest and really just focus on telling your story as how you wanted it to be told. Reason number 2 is you want to improve your art skills. In my opinion, doing comics is a fantastic way to challenge your art skills because you end up drawing a lot of things you may not normally think of drawing. Say, for an example, you have a contemporary story and you have to draw like kitchen appliances, which is something I don't think a lot of people would just think about drawing. So yeah, comics are great at making you draw a lot of different things. The other thing about making comics is that it forces you to draw repetitively. So you are putting yourself in this position to draw these characters, backgrounds, and props over and over and over. Naturally, what's going to happen is you will improve your art skills. Now, someone might say, well, why don't you just do illustrations then? You don't have to do comics for that. And that's true. But the thing is that I think sometimes choosing to do comics, it might feel more purposeful than doing single piece illustrations, because with comics, it comes with a serialized story and it could make you feel more invested in fleshing out your characters' stories. Obviously, you are allowed to decide what you want to work on. Say you want to improve drawing human anatomy, or clothes and fashion, or props, backgrounds, or you want to improve on your coloring, your shadowing, or any of the other digital art rendering skills. These are all valid, and you're allowed to choose what you want to focus on. I think for the sake of completing your comic project, it might be a good approach to focus on 1 or 2 art skills at a time. So again, with the goal in mind is that you want to improve your art skills. So if this is your priority, a couple of things that you might do that would align with this goal is maybe you're not using 3D assets. Or if you do, you are a little bit more strategic on how you use them. And maybe in this case as well, you are doing collab or commission work and you are the artist for another comic story. It might not be your comic story, but you're still working on comics, and you're still hitting your goal of working on your art and improving on your art. Reason number 3, you want to be part of the comic community. Maybe you love reading comics and you want to dive deeper into this industry. And what other great way to do that than to make your own comic? Or maybe it's just about saying that you did it, that you created a comic and it's out there for the world to read, right? I can say in adult life, it gets so busy because we're juggling day job, family responsibilities, and we should be allocating time to work out, get enough sleep, and on top of all of that, we're trying to make comics. And as we all know, A comic project is very time consuming. So, as you can imagine, there's not much time left to do socializing in real life. So, diving deeper into the industry as a comic creator, you are going to discover people who have the same hobby and interests as you, and maybe it could lead to making really good friends. I think it's nice to make friends who are into the same hobbies as you. That way, when you talk about your struggles and you're doing your grind, it's relatable and they can understand you. So, in this scenario, if your priority is just that you just wanted to be part of the community, maybe it's just about having fun. In this case, if your goal here is that you just wanted to have fun, then remember that. And if it starts to become really stressful to do your comic, then you're doing something wrong. Because your intention in the beginning was just to have fun with this. So let's say if maybe you are letting other people's feedback get into your head too much, and now suddenly you're taking everything so personally and it's just really affecting you on making your comic here. But if that wasn't really your intention to be the best artist or to be the best storyteller, and you just wanted to have fun and just to be able to say that you did it and you are doing this as a hobby, then just remind yourself that and learn to just tone it down on those negative feedback that you may be getting that's really affecting you. Or perhaps just disable your comments, and that's perfectly fine too, and just keep doing you and just have fun with what you're doing. So reason number 4 is you want fame in this community. All right, so I can see this going 2 ways. One, either you've made a very successful comic that just breaks the internet, or you have a very large social media following and people know you. So for the first part about a successful comic, basically it means that the quality of your comic is important. And we can talk about what quality means in another video, but I do want to say this: do not mistake quality to skill. For the latter part about having a large social media following and outreach, it's obviously going to require that you have a social media presence. And then pay attention to market trends and these trendy tropes and ride that wave when it comes. So reason number 5 is you want to make money. Most times when I hear people talk about money in comics, the conversation normally goes like this: I want to make comics for a living and that it's sustainable. So then what does that mean? It means it's financially stable to be able to pursue doing comics full time, aka, does not have a day job, or their day job is comics. And you know what? Honestly, some people are able to enjoy their hobby more if it's financially stable, and I don't blame them for it. Like, doing comics is a lot of work, and I'm talking about years of work. It kind of makes sense for some people to feel burnt out trying to do their comic, for it to not really go anywhere for years and years and years because they're not able to do it full time and they're juggling all these other things. So I can see the desire to want to make a sustainable income while making comics for a living. So with this goal in mind, with making money doing your comics, I can see that you are involved in Patreon, Coffee, these sites that are essentially like a tipping jar for creators, or doing Kickstarter for your comic project. The other thing is that you could also do paid collaborations or paid commissions, or you could also get into creating comic assets, whether it's text, backgrounds, brushes, 3D models, and whatnot. The thing is, you're still doing comics. It just might not be your comic story or art. One other thing that I have to say about those who want to make money with their comic: you need to make sure that all of your comic assets and the visual components you use for your comic is allowed for commercial use. Because otherwise, if it's not, you may end up having to redo your work if you find out later on that you actually want to do this commercially, and now you have to like change your text, your backgrounds, and your brushes and whatnot because you didn't purchase the commercial licensing to do any of that. As you navigate through your journey of making comics, you're going to have to learn how to shift through all of the noise, as in all of these opinions on the different ways of how to do things and why you should be doing them. The flip side is the industry can change. So the opportunities and other comic creator experiences we hear about today can sound very different in the next 5 to 7 years or so, whether for better or for worse. So keep an open mind on that. You probably hear this often, but making comics is a big project and it requires hours and hours of work. Be honest with yourself on why you want to do this and then look at your options. What are the realistic opportunities that align with your goals and the trajectory of your skills right now? And do you have the patience and the dedication to do what it takes to get where you want to be in this industry? I think sometimes you might find that you can fulfill what you want, but it might not look like what you expected it to. I do hear sometimes where other creators shame those who are trying to get into the comic space with the intention of making money or fame, which is very interesting, to say the least. It's a topic that kind of rouses up some creators, like it's a fragile subject, which is definitely a topic for another time. But to circle back here, I want to say this. I'm not going to shame you if your driving purpose for making comics is you want fame and money. I believe that you can achieve a level of success towards those intentions. But the real question is not about if you can, but rather how much. So it's more about managing your expectations on the levels of success in these areas. I think it is important that you are honest with yourself on why you want to make comics. If money and fame is important to you, then at least from the beginning, you are aware of that. And therefore, you can be more intentional with how you navigate making comics, where you're working towards those goals. If you don't have a clear why, you will be swayed by people's opinions on where and how to make comics. And because you don't understand your purpose, you can feel a sense of feeling left out or jealousy when you hear about other people's successes in their comic projects. Progress is relative to a goal, right? So if you don't really know why you're doing this comic, you won't really have solid goals, or at least goals that you resonate with. Therefore, it's hard to measure your own progress, much less celebrate it, when you don't have a clear goal that you resonate with. If you're struggling to determine your reason why you want to make comics, as a suggestion, I have a couple of questions that you can ask yourself. Number one, in this comic space, if there's anything you can do, and there's a guarantee that you will not fail, what is it that you would do? Number two, do you want to do this full-time, half-time, or just part-time? Number three, what do you want people to remember you by? I think the combination of these questions can help you start to brainstorm on what you really want. If you funnel your responses, you should find that your desires are pointing at a general direction and goal. In summary, I believe it's important that you come to terms and solidify what you really want with making comics so you understand why you're doing this. It's going to help give you clarity on where and what you need to focus on. At the same time, I believe it can help give you some peace because despite all the noise and everybody else's stories, you feel secure and confident that you're going in the right direction. By the end of the day, this is your life, and other people's comic journey, motives, and opinions are their own, and you need to remember what is yours.